Hi, I'm Theo.
Hi, I'm Calum.
Hi, I'm Beckii.
And this week over on the Childline YouTube channel, we're talking about heteronormativity. Heteronormativity, bit of a hard thing to get your head around, but what does it mean to you?
I think first off, it's a really difficult word to say. Society as a whole sees heterosexuality as the norm. So whenever you look to the media, your favourite movie, your favourite TV show, whatever it might be, you're always seeing two straight people on screen as the romance, and that goes into magazines, it goes into everyday life.
It's something that a lot of people don't actually think about as well, because it is the norm, you know, and people who maybe don't have issues with their sexuality have never really thought outside of the norm.
So for guys who are a little bit effeminate and for girls who are a little bit more masculine, they can be affected by heteronormativity and cisgender normativity because it affects their world as well.
We're brought up into a society where you're kind of expected to be cisgender, you're expected to be heterosexual. And I think for the people who do identify in those ways, they may not realise it's an issue.
When you're young, boys aren't allowed to sleep over, but girls are. And that just speaks to how deep-rooted heteronormativity is.
The easiest way I always find to understand it is if you think about like children's movies. Oh look, the prince marries the princess, and then suddenly you think, oh, but I don't want to marry a princess, maybe I want to marry a prince, and then you feel just completely ostracized.
It's just little things that just make you feel, yeah, that's so true. It relates to coming out as well. Like, why do people have to come out? Because, you know, not being straight is other. Kind of like a straight until proven otherwise world, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
People do need to come out to feel the acceptance they want, but for us to kind of get to a place where coming out isn't an issue, heteronormativity needs to be challenged.
Definitely.
A lot of people are ignorant to it, and only through talking about it do people realise that, oh God, sometimes I do think of things in a heteronormative way.
I think it's a process that you have to kind of unlearn a lot of that behaviour.
So how can we challenge heteronormativity in day-to-day lives?
We can't assume anything about anyone's sexuality or gender based on how they look. What you're making is just assumptions based on your kind of what you perceive as normal.
It seems really obvious. Try and not assume things about other people, but it's not your fault if you do, because it's so ingrained in us.
That's it.
So it's not a matter of, oh, you're a bad person. It's more about going, I don't know yet. We haven't had that discussion, and just keeping yourself in check.
Because you can't figure out if somebody's gay by the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they act. Your sexuality simply means like the person you're attracted to.
Even gay people, even LGBTQ people should challenge their own thought processes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I was at a party recently, and I remember I was talking to a girl, and I remember asking her, like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And it didn't occur to me to say, do you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend? So even as a gay man, I have like a heteronormative way of thinking.
It's also really important that you can get to a point where you feel brave enough to challenge people outside, because that's the only way other people are really going to learn.
If you're amongst friends and you hear somebody say, oh, that's so gay or something like that, it's important to challenge that. But what I think is also important is that, like, never put yourself in a place of risk.
And it doesn't have to be aggressive either. You can very kindly say these things. You know, a lot of people don't even realise that they're doing it.
The playground thing of you're so gay, I think, you know, we could talk about it being used as homophobic bullying, but a lot of young people sometimes use it just out of ignorance and not even thinking.
Maybe you can suggest a better word which would fit that situation, you know?
And another thing that's really important is sort of supporting media representation.
I get so happy and excited whenever I see, you know, a gay person, a bisexual person, a transgender person. When I see them on screen, yes, I love seeing this. This makes me feel great about myself. But then it's so few and far between. In
recent kids shows, like cartoons and things, actually they're being written by some really cool people, and they're writing in, you know, non-heteronormative roles and things like that.
It isn't that there's a character that is gay, but there are no gender expectations on the character, and there's no sexuality expectations on the character, and the stories are written that way. And so as a young person growing up, it's normalised.
Something else important to think about is there's this kind of halfway representation you see, like this kind of, it's almost like queer baiting, where you see these almost gay relationships, but they're never confirmed.
It's like they don't care about representation, they're just using it as a gimmick, just something that makes it a little bit more edgy.
And now we'd like to hear from you. How can we encourage better representation of a wider range of identities in the media and in society? Thanks for coming in, Calum and Beckii.
Thank you,
Thanks
it's
for
been a
having
pleasure.
us.
But for now, join us next week, and bye!
Bye!
Yeah.